Firstly, the Sanji video was taken down, but you can watch it on a link in the description. Second, if you're curious about my thoughts on Stampede, I took part in a discussion hosted on my friend's channel. Thirdly, a short while back I guested on the Wano report for chapter 973. I even teased the following video. Links for all of them in the description, and please enjoy. Why was I born into the Kozuki clan? Stirred on by the blood in his veins, Oden's ability to read the poneglyphs got him the attention of the one who had become the most influential person in the world. And in light of such a fateful meeting, Oden would ask himself about the nature of his birth. The ability of the Kozuki clan to read poneglyphs was meant for something unable to be constrained by the shores of Wano. And yet, that battle against his involuntary confinement was one that would define all of his formative years, very much at his expense. Oden could not leave the shores of Wano. Literally speaking, it was for his inability to sail and the prohibitive weather surrounding the country. Figuratively, this symbolized Wano's traditions of isolationism, entrapping him within. And this served as a challenge Oden could not overcome by himself. And for Oden to come up short in a task he tried so many times at is surprising in itself, as Oden would always remark about feeling cramped in his home country. For his greatness was so well beyond those shores he was unable to leave. His deeds were straight out of a folk tale. Nothing Wano had to offer could stand to match him. His father's authority, the Yakuza, the men of Curry, even the animal viewed as a mountain god. He was too big a man for the borders of the country, so looking beyond it was only natural. Not just for himself, because even though they did not test their borders, those of Wano remained just as trapped. And Oden wanted to open them to the world. We see a microcosm of this through Curry, where any could enter but none could leave, a tradition upheld for tradition's sake. But when Oden broke down those walls, Ashura Doji admitted to the good gain from that shattering of old ways, glad to experience a peace he'd never known before. Breaking down barriers and allowing for otherwise impossible connections is something that would allow for wonders the populace of Wano had never known. Even Oden, who wanted an adventure like nothing he'd ever seen before. By the time he made it out onto those seas, his circumstances meant that he would never get the most important lesson an adventure could offer him. What Wano's shores could never give Oden was a failure that truly showed him the limits of what one could accomplish on their own. Gathering a family around him, Oden took the burdens of their weakness and failure upon himself, giving so much easily and earning their servitude even though he'd never asked. Yasui knew that for all his greatness, Oden could not do everything alone, pushing the scabbards to become great. But later on, his brief return revealed to him the rumbling of Orochi and Kaido's machinations, the scabbards showing that they were still too reliant on Oden, and that he still needed to carry them, even as far as they'd come. If those of Wano could never show Oden his failings, then his only opportunity could come from outside of Wano. But even then, it never really came to pass. Oden's limits and need to rely on others were revealed when he needed the help of Whitebeard to simply leave his island. But Whitebeard never challenged or accepted him based on those needs. The manic samurai who disregarded the wisdom of his own consorts and displayed a clear independence was potentially dangerous to the close camaraderie Whitebeard fostered among his men. But by giving up his chance to sail with Whitebeard to save a woman in need, Oden showed his ability to protect others and earned the right to sail with Whitebeard. Instead of having his lack of ability to rely on others tested, he was instead rewarded for the ability to protect others he'd always been capable of, as often as he'd been misunderstood for it. And alongside Whitebeard, and eventually Roger, Oden was never in a position of leadership, and thus could not grow from his adventure in the same way Luffy did. The future Pirate King now well aware of the lessons Oden so desperately needed to learn. Through Luffy we can see so many of Oden's tendencies. Luffy was burdened with the need to protect his comrades, taking so much on himself even though he wasn't strong enough to fight without sacrificing himself. Because Luffy's weaker comrades could not protect themselves, Luffy fought in their place to keep them safe, no matter how much he had to push himself to do so. That same quality is evoked in Oden, the fool of a lord protecting the citizens of Wano in quiet for years without even a whisper reaching his men. The burden his alone to shoulder. But Luffy met failure. At Tsubodi in the war he encountered his limits and was forced to rely on others. Shirahoshi showed him that even a weak crybaby could be capable of great strength. On Dressrosa, he let others bear the burden of his weakness. Oda later specified that Luffy potentially could have run away from Doflamingo on his own, but to save the country, Luffy recognized his personal limits, using the help of the gladiators to buy him every second of recuperation time he could get. These were actions that Oden would dare not take. His strength had been shown to be able to protect anyone, he just needed to risk only himself, so easily sacrificing his reputation. But that was because Wano could not challenge him. Had those borders been open, perhaps he would have been able to leave, see the world, and grow much the same way Luffy did. But he could not. Oden was more than enough of a man for Wano, but his opponent in the end wasn't Orochi, that product of Wano's broken royal hierarchy. It was Kaido, one from beyond the country Oden's growth had been stunted by. Kaido, as strong as he and his forces were, feared the possibility of Oden rallying even just the Yakuza to fight alongside him, but Oden only fought with a group as small as the Straw Hat Pirates. The alliances Luffy formed were full of people who knew Luffy could not conquer the seas alone, yet Oden faced one of the strongest beings in the world and his mighty crew with only those of Kuri at his side. The rest of Wano would have gladly followed him into battle, yet he did not risk the country he fought to protect, just himself, for even those of Kuri were people he would die for. Though he fought for Wano, Oden contradicted both the country's very nature and his own goal. Oden wanted to unite Wano with the outside world, yet refused help from that outside world, his own course of action isolationist in its very nature. The ideal is evident even in Wano's makeup. The island divided into sections with varying weather patterns, ruled by 5 major clans. Wano in itself is akin to several parts made into a whole, the island in itself representing unity, yet hosting a struggle of clans that led to Kurozumi Orochi, the product of disunity that would let the country burn if it suited him. And its only savior was Oden, a man who could not represent unity as long as he stood alone. Orochi, betrayed by Wano, was able to do what Oden could not in seeking outside help. But the alliance he formed was one of over-reliance, Orochi clearly having much less power on his own. As such, Kaido's factories take a toll on Wano, supporting him at the country's expense. And situated as the ideal balance between these two extremes is Luffy. His place alongside Momonosuke is not one where he bows to a young shogun heir, or where a child bows to the one who will become Pirate King. They are friends, comrades, the ninja pirate mink samurai alliance, one truly echoing the makeup of Wano itself. Several parts joined together as one with none above the others. Oden's death was one where he had put the whole country above himself. In recognition of his weakness, he allowed others to inherit the will he was too weak to see met himself. Born a Kozuki, he was not able to journey himself to be the agent of change he wished to be. But through aiding Roger, he helped set a pirate age in motion. He helped the world to boil. Oden was not a man who had set the world aflame with the spark of change. He burned intensely on his own, but trapped by Wano and his own failings, it remained as a contained heat, meant to simmer. Others meant to take that rising heat into action. For 20 years, Wano has steadily boiled, Oden's legacy leaving a descent in those who resist the current rule, the stage set for that crucial tipping point. Oden's last words, his final statement, was not his to finish, as Luffy will fulfill his dying wish, his journey preparing him with the answers to questions Oden could never ask. When the crowd watching his execution finished his words, it was because they finally understood the man that never let his reputation be a bother to him. For Oden was born to boil. I'd like to thank my patrons for their support, such as Maz, Mohammed Hakim, Gloogle, Tengoon, Mr. Cynical, Oliver Mort, Flarbu, and Behanort. Thank you for watching.